Hari Om.
Hariom.
We're so privileged and honored to have Professor Dr. Melody Ding. She is the epidemiologist and also she is the population behavioral scientist with University of Sydney Faculty of Medicine. Melody has published over 300 articles in all top medical journals including Lancet, British Medical Journal and many more. It's really an honor for all of us to listen from Melody. The essence of what the science and the research has done, and also compare that with what yoga has been saying. So I'm straight going to Melody, and again thank you Melody for.
Thank you so much. I'm very humbled to be here. Thank you for your invitation.
It's wonderful to just have Melody because she's my professor and I'm her student, so it's always a great honor for me to talk to her and learn from her experience.
And you're a wonderful student, Dr. Gandhar.
Thank you, Melody. Recently, just in last couple of months, Melody published an article, a research paper, and for the first time, she showed that yes, 7,500 steps daily is a very good milestone, is a very good number for us to get good health, and that publication received a lot of coverage from all top media channels all over the world, and it received over few billion interactions and connections. So I straight go to Melody and request her to just say a little bit about it.
Thank you so much for noticing my research. So this piece of work came from my role, my leadership role in updating the Australian physical activity guidelines, because for many years we have a number that is 150 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity to kind of guide us how, as an aim, how much we need to be active. But if I ask you, Ganda, how many minutes of moderate intensity physical activity you did last week?
It's hard to remember.
That's right?
Absolutely.
Because, for people, they will have to think that, what is moderate? Yeah. What is vigorous for me, right? And then all these little minutes of climbing upstairs, walking, running for a bus, you can mentally add it up all together.
No way.
And that's why that's why steps are really good metrics for a lot of people, because
point,
many of us wear activity trackers. Even our phone provide us with some indications of how active we are in terms of
it does
steps.
count the steps also, the phone.
Exactly. And back in 2018 and 19, when the US physical activity guideline was updated, they actually looked into the evidence on step counts, but at that time their conclusion was that there wasn't enough evidence to guide a quantitative number in terms of how many steps we aim for. Even though it was only 7 years later, for us, there has been so much more research published in the last 7 years. So when we are updating the Australian guidelines, we were really interested in looking into step counts in addition to minutes, because the minutes, 100 minutes, 150 minutes is very established already. So yeah, we, our team really, get into the nitty-gritty. We did basically 8 big systematic reviews looking at the broad range of health outcomes. And we performed a technique called meta-analysis. Basically is to combine all the results from all the studies we identified and put it together to see what is the effect like of steps on various health outcomes. And what we found was a very interesting kind of pattern of relationship. At the lower end of step counts, for example, when someone only took 2,000 steps a day, and if we ask that person to increase to 4,000, we see quite a sharp increase in health benefits.
Wow.
So, and then we start to see, these kind of incremental benefits start to diminish around 7,000 steps. So, when we get to 10,000 steps, it is still better than 7,000 steps for some of the outcomes, but for some of the other outcomes, the effects are quite comparable. And also, it become like a diminishing return on investment.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's how you came to a figure around 7,500.
Yes, 7,000.
7,000.
7,000.
That's really wonderful. So like now I know that okay, this many steps I do, and I have this minimum health benefits.
Yeah. I
That's
think
wonderful.
we think that there are three important messages coming out of this research. Number one, if you're currently doing nothing, like being very inactive, doing some is better than doing nothing, right? Like what I said, 4,000 compared to 2,000, huge benefits. And the second is that if you want the quantitative aim, 7,000 steps is good enough aim. Of course, for those who can, do more and want to do more, there's no harm of doing 10,000. So there's nothing wrong about the previous 10,000
But
steps.
not a lot of additional benefits.
Exactly, but it doesn't provide harm, so that's
Yeah,
important.
that's better.
So, the previous 10,000 steps was not evidence-based, even though all around the world, everybody thinks we need 10,000 steps a day.
Exactly. So I think this becomes like a landmark research, which gives a certain figure of steps based on all of this huge number of research papers published. So I think that's a great contribution. So thank
you very much.
But then moving ahead, physical activity, diet, and sleep are some of your core areas of research. And I think with what I know, is these lifestyle related aspects, if we correct, then we can actually reverse many lifestyle diseases also.
Correct.
So if you can just give a little synthesis of the evidence.
Yeah. Number one, I think it's really important to know that there's no panacea for longevity and health. Oftentimes, especially these days, there's so much fake news and commercials about wellness and longevity, right? Like you go on YouTube, you often get those, eat this and then you never get sick again, eat that one food only, do this one thing only, you lose your belly fat. Most of them, maybe not all of them, but probably close to all of them, is not evidence-based because fundamentally as humans, we want to take the shortcut. If we want to adhere to healthy lifestyle, to eat right, to exercise, to sleep well, that takes a lot of effort. And most of the time people will think that I just want to take that one pill,
like
that
magic
one supplement.
pill.
Exactly.
And whatever I do, bad things, I'll keep doing it.
Exactly.
I still will have health.
Yes, but the thing is the magic pill doesn't exist yet. Maybe it will exist one day, but at the moment, really, nothing changes the importance of healthy lifestyle, including what you mentioned.
That's very important what you're saying. And
Healthy
I just want to
lifestyle.
also add to your information that the VO2 max, the maximum oxygen absorption by lungs when you're performing at your peak capacity, is a very important criteria, and Melody will talk about it also, maybe a little bit more understanding. But I want to tell you that elite athletes and really like very fit people have that VO2 max in the range of 45 to 50, and Melody already has that around 50. So which is a fascinating thing to see.
It's
She
funny
just not
to embarrass me.
no, she's just not doing the research, but she has followed all of that and reached that. She is definitely going to tell us more about it, because see, studying is one thing and achieving it is another thing. And I think why Melody is special for us to follow is because of that. What she knows, she's following, and she has changed everything. So I think maybe you can.
You're really embarrassing me. You're too kind again.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, I'm passionate about physical activity, not only doing the research about physical activity, but also, participating in physical activity myself. I live a very healthy lifestyle, and I think I have a few tips to share with all of you. So, if I'm talking in academic terms, we have been doing decades of evidence building in terms of what core components of physical activity are important for our health. So, let's look at three major components here. So number one is what we call the aerobic physical activity. So that's the activities that get us out of breath. It strengthens our cardiorespiratory systems. It makes our heart pump blood more efficiently. It makes our vascular system contract more efficiently, and it also increase our lung function. So what you mentioned about VO2 max, that is probably the gold standard measure of our cardiovascular fitness. And it's a very, very strong predictor of longevity.
Yeah.
So how do you increase your VO2 max?
Yeah, that's like a very important question.
Yeah.
And many people want to increase, but they do not really know exactly how to approach this.
Yeah, so getting your heart rate up and start slow, but gradually build up. So in physical activity research, we talk about absolute intensity and relative intensity, and I want to emphasize that relative intensity is really important for someone who is currently unfit and maybe carrying some extra weight. Maybe by doing small things, the heart rate already goes up quite a bit. So it's important.
Quickly it goes up, very quickly.
So it's important that we actually start with different baseline. So if somebody's already kind of getting out of breath by taking some steps uphill, that could be a place to start. But once you train that more, then maybe you're better at not at letting your heart rate go up too
that
fast.
much, yeah.
So then you can increase your intensity a little bit more. So gradually we stretch and grow. We're better at controlling our heart rate so that it doesn't just jump up too quickly. And also, we're better at letting our heart rate go down once we stop exercising.
So what do you recommend the heart rate for someone who is just a beginner, like percentage of maximum heart rate? So we have the formula like 220 minus your age.
Yeah, so that is absolute intensity. So that is a good guide. But for some people, for me, if I use the absolute intensity, I can achieve my exercise benefit. But for someone who is unfit and currently, not doing exercise, maybe they need a lower
So maybe
level.
like 70-80% of that, or what is the percentage you
So
recommend?
I think it's actually better to use our body's reaction as a guide.
Okay.
Of course, aiming for number is good, and some of the activity trackers these days can adjust the target based on your fitness level. I don't know, what the audience has, but in our definition of moderate intensity activity is when people's heart rate goes up and you start sweating a bit, so that is moderate. So usually when we do like brisk walking, that's what we achieve.
Okay, so brisk walking is a good way to start for those who are not used to this kind of strong fitness regimes.
Correct.
So this is a good start.
So
I
that's
would say.
moderate.
Yeah, brisk walking.
And vigorous is even one step up. So vigorous is when we get out of breath. So when you're walking around and then you get out of breath, you have to pause in order to talk.
Correct. Or maybe like climbing steps of say 3-story, 4-story building.
Yes, correct. That's vigorous for most people. So it's important to know that both moderate intensity and vigorous intensity activities are good for our cardiovascular health.
So you mean not everyone has to go and run, but just brisk walking can give them a moderate activity. If they walk up fast up stairs, that can also be a vigorous activity.
Exactly. So ideally we want to do both, but moderate could be a good place to start. And actually the easiest place to start is to start walking, because walking is free. Everybody knows how to do how to walk, right? It doesn't involve investment or particular location or facilities. So that's a good place to start. And once we, start walking, building up our stamina a little bit, build up our confidence, then I think it's really important that we choose the activity that we actually enjoy.
Walking is also there's a lot of different studies saying. Some say that okay, just walk 250 steps every hour. Some say walk 15 minutes at a stretch. Some say walk 1 hour. Or
at
so
the moment,
what
the
do you
evidence,
think is the
everything adds up. It doesn't
Everything
have
adds
to
up.
be a particular way.
Okay. That's interesting.
It doesn't have to be a particular way. For me, a person.
That is very helpful, what you said. Any way you do it, whether it's 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 hour, half an hour, spread across the day.
Exactly.
Or
so that also means that there's no excuse for not working.
yes,
Right?
that's so important.
Yeah, because
telling.
people often say, I don't have that 30 minutes, I don't have that hour.
Exactly.
But you can spread it out.
Spread it
right?
out. So you just answered and maybe gave solution to those people who say we are so busy that we have no time.
Yeah. Okay. So walking, especially when it at a faster pace, it belongs to that aerobic physical activity. Remember that I was saying that we're like mentioning 3 components.
Okay.
And the number 2 is muscle strengthening activity. It is important, especially as we age. We start to lose our muscle mass around 30. So that's sarcopenia. And anyone, that's something that all of us experience. Right? So how do we prevent or slow down the loss of our muscle mass is to actually make sure that we stimulate the muscle so much that we...
And muscle mass is so important also to maintain your blood glucose levels and to prevent the diabetes. As in India, the diabetes is going up. All over the world, the diabetes and pre-diabetic age is lowering.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is very important.
So generally, we want to increase our muscle mass, the percentage of our body that is made up of muscles. How do we do that? You know, like the one that you mainly think about is probably, you know, lifting weights. But also, you know, push up, sit up. You can do
Or
purely
Surya
body
Namaskar.
weight. Exactly. Yeah.
Or some asanas, most of the asanas are self body weight exercises.
So so the current guidelines recommend at least 2 sessions of muscle strengthening activities that involves major muscle groups
In a week?
in a week.
In a week. Okay, so that's not as regular as walking. So twice a week, muscle strengthening activity.
That's enough.
Yeah, and every day walking.
So also, you know, especially when we continue to age, get to the golden age of our life, the lower legs, like the lower extremity muscles are particularly important for preventing falls.
Yeah, they're quite strong muscles if we make them.
Yes.
But if they're weak, then falls,
Yes.
as you say.
Squats and some of the, you know, standing balance
Correct.
pose, or just standing poses in general in yoga, that could help. So this is number 2. And number 3 is, you know, we sometimes call it balance training. Other times we call it, you know, multi-component activities. So these are things like yoga, Tai Chi, that, you know, kind of combines multiple elements with a strong focus on balance. And this is particularly important for older adults in terms of preventing falls. So, you know, now going back to my research about the 7,000 step versus 10,000 step. Why 7,000 step? You know, potentially positive news. Not everybody has unlimited time and resources and energy, right?
Very true.
So that 3,000 steps you might save, you could then reinvest into muscle strengthening activities
that's
or
a very
balance
nice
training,
way
right?
to say,
Because the last thing we want is people said, great, so I don't have to do 10,000 steps. I'm just going to sit on the chair and play with my phone. That's not what we want. But if we really think about, you know, how do we live an optimum active lifestyle, we have to think, you know, activity is similar to diet. We have to have a healthy balance of different components, right? So I think for this, you know, think about the 3 things, how to incorporate that into your day-to-day living. So then you're good in terms of activity.
So basically, you're saying that one cardiorespiratory, like strong, vigorous activity, one moderate activity of brisk walking. Vigorous activity can include like walking up
Vigorous
the
activity
steps
is icing on cake. It's not a must.
It's
Because
not a must.
moderate
Okay.
intensity activity can already help with cardiorespiratory fitness. It's for those who can and want to do more, they can get to the vigorous level, but it's, I think for the general public, we usually say as long as you get to the moderate, it's good.
So you're basically making it easier for everyone that at least you do moderate activity every day, which just covers 7,000, that's all. 7,000 steps is roughly around 1,500 steps is 1 kilometer. So it's about 5 kilometers every day, spread out however you want. And then Melody is saying that you need to do at least 2 times. If little bit more, it's good. Muscle training. That also includes yoga practices such as Surya Namaskar or push-ups or even focused on lower limbs. So just this much can also bring fitness. That's what you're suggesting.
I can make it even easier because research has shown that you don't even have to, you know, be active every day. Even weekend warriors can have comparable benefits.
Oh, wow.
So,
Just
you know,
weekends.
absolutely no excuses. You know, if you say that I don't have time every day for 30 minutes to an hour a day, it's still fine, but you just have to do a large amount on the weekend. So,
Okay.
yeah.
But let me just ask now this to Melody. She's given you so much freedom and she's telling us that, okay, only weekends is still good. But look, if, Melody, I'm asking, if we want to have VO2 max 50 like you, how much you do? What is your physical activity routine?
I try to incorporate activity into my day-to-day living. So on the day I go to work, I have hybrid working arrangements, so I don't come to the office every day, but half of the time I'm in the office. I ride my bike to work, and because I live by the beach, I have to ride up a very steep hill. And the whole trip is very hilly. So it's 10 kilometers each way, so it's about 80 minutes of riding when I go to work.
So then that's it, your physical activity
For
is
that
done.
day, I'm done, but oftentimes I play tennis with my friends at work, or
So
I go to dance class
in addition
after.
to the
In addition to that,
bicycle?
yes.
Okay.
And then the days when I work from home, I usually start the day with some high intensity interval training on my balcony. I just like, getting my heart rate really up, jumping around, lifting weights, and I also, incorporate dance, yoga, and swimming.
How long you do yoga? Like how many times you do yoga?
Oh, this is gonna be embarrassing for me. I used to do it every day. Now it's being relapsed to about once or twice a week.
Twice a week. So anyway, but you're sticking with yoga practice twice a week. You're doing bicycle 20 kilometers almost every day. And then on top of that, you're playing tennis and also do high intensity interval training. So that's quite like a strong...
Yeah, but I'm extreme, so don't have to do that. It's just because I like that. We are active for different reasons. If you ask me, this is like, I'm being honest with you, this is my exercise regimen, but
But basically your fitness secret is going to this strong regime then.
That's what I enjoy, but
Fantastic.
That's not necessarily what everyone enjoys.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. But so even if we can't do as per what you're doing, even if we just do 7,000 steps and yoga a little bit muscle training with activities like push-ups or squats or something like that, I think it should be...
That's good. Yeah. That's really good. That's excellent.
That's wonderful. So now we have a clarity as to what science is saying, because every day new researchers come and they all have different numbers.
Yes, correct.
So I think coming from you, these basic guidelines, I think they are very important. Yeah. The next question that I have is about diet, because you're coming from China and then you've been to Western countries most of your life, US and then Australia. But then I know you are mostly plant-based, eating plant-based diet. So definitely there is a shift in like what is happening in these countries with most people and what you're doing. So can you just explain the secret of the diet?
I don't have secret of diet, and I actually don't feel as confident talking about diet as physical activity, because physical activity is my main research area. But I think for diet, there is very good consensus around the world in terms of dietary guidelines. In terms of the things that we definitely want to increase in our diet, these are fruits and vegetables, healthy whole grains. And I think in a lot of countries like India, it's quite hard to get, for example, brown rice. In China, every time when I go back, I always struggle getting brown rice. But I think there is a trend happening. So try to have grains that are less processed.
Less processed grains.
Because we've got the full nutrients in there, right? And then healthy sources of protein, really important.
So say like lentils or beans or...
Exactly, tofu. For those who have dairies, like cheese, eggs, those
or
things.
maybe butter or... But so this is all like plant-based diet you're mostly recommending, and also of course you're saying if those who are not eating say tofu and other things, they can have some part of dairy and all that. But then is there any suggestion that you want to give as to how much to eat and when to eat? And there's a lot of discussions about fasting these days. So how you see the evidence of
there's
this?
definitely...
Or just not fasting, but there's calorie restricted diets also. So how you see combining everything?
I'm not an expert on that. I know that there's good research, but they tend to be in a laboratory setting in terms of fasting. But we have very little evidence that follow people long term, because it's really hard for people to stick to a regimen for 10 years and see who dies, So I feel like there's very good biological, physiological research evidence, Theoretically, it should definitely help. Long-term regimens, we know less about, but one suggestion that this is not my words, but I'm taking that from nutritionists, is that make sure you get your nutrients right. That is the number one. So that is the most important thing. Only when you absolutely know that you can get everything right, then move on to fasting, if that's your desire. Because the problem is when we start doing fasting, if we're cutting out breakfast, if we're cutting out dinner, we often cut out key nutrients. For me, for a while, I was practicing, restricted, time-restricted eating, so I skipped the breakfast. And then I realized that I'm actually losing the only opportunity during the day that I have healthy dairies. Because breakfast is the time when I have my yogurt and fruits and whole grains. And if I cut breakfast, then I lose all these, food sources.
Nutrients,
And then I later on read research about gender differences between, men and women in terms of how we respond to fasting. And then I got to know that as women, it's actually not a good idea that we, we fast in the morning or fast exercise while fasting, which is what I did for, 1 or 2 years. I get up, I'm super hungry, but I exercise and I wait. And apparently that's really bad for women because that makes our stress hormone go up crazy. So there's gender differences there for sure. So after, reading about this research, I'm now basically just going back to intuitive eating. I eat when I'm hungry. I don't eat mindlessly, but I haven't really designed a regimen for myself in terms of fasting. But I would be really interested in trying new things out on myself.
I think what you're saying takes me to the yoga recommendations. First of all, if you look at what Buddha recommended, there are stories that he did 40 days of fasting at a stretch. And then he experimented again, and probably he didn't have the data, but he did it with himself. And then he came up with a very important word. He said, follow middle path, not any extreme, not this side or not that side. So not too much fasting and not too much eating. If you go to Bhagavad Gita, again a very important text that talks about lifestyle, Sri Krishna is very clearly saying that you will never be successful if you are eating too much or if you are not eating at all. So I think what you are recommending with your understanding of all the research is it's a middle ground. It's not just this way or that way.
That's the path I take, but I know that there will be, there's always strong believers who think that this is absolutely the way, and I respect that, but this is just my personal choice. And on that note, I think I'll add one more point, that it's important that we look at our diet and exercise kind of more synergistically, as a whole, holistically, because, our nutritional need might depend on our activity levels as well. For example, for me, because I do hard exercise and I was vegetarian for many years, and then, it depleted my iron quite a lot. So I now either need to occasionally eat meat or take iron supplements. That's because of my activity patterns. But others might not need that.
Yeah,
so
if
it's
they don't
important.
have, your activity schedule is so strict and like so strong. If people don't have that much activity level, then probably they won't need even supplements.
Yes, correct.
So that's very good to understand, because there is always a lot of confusion, and people come up with these superfoods, and then they come up with these diet plans, and then this certain one study comes up and says no, only this type of diet is good, maybe high protein diet or low carb diet, and this diet and that diet. But you probably have given already the overview of
It
how
is really hard to pinpoint the health benefits to one food only. So when we look at the nutritional epidemiology research, it's the Wild West, because you can put anything into the model and it will give you anything you want. So I always take that findings with a grain of salt, even though I'm an epidemiologist myself.
Correct, correct. No, but that's very helpful. I think that solves the problem for many of our viewers and people who want to take that example and follow it in their life. More importantly, also, there's some studies that saying that okay, eat at particular times. Say evening, the dinner should not be very late, because it will have negative effect on all of these things. So what are the timings of food that you
This
suggest?
is not something that I can comment on, because it's not my research area. I don't want to kind of step out of my lane. But I think, these could be very individual as well, depending on people's
What
sleep
time
patterns.
you eat?
Ooh, when my work and activities get busy, I don't necessarily stick to a certain time. I think that's not good. That's an area of improvement for me. Yeah.
But generally, how many times you eat?
I eat 3 meals a day.
3 meals a day, okay.
I only snack if I'm hungry.
Okay.
And I try to keep my digestive system empty for 4 hours and not eat too frequently. So,
Not too frequently. Because when, like I've seen you for many days now, and it seems that you're very disciplined, and you can easily restrict yourself, like stop yourself from eating unhealthy snacks and the food that comes. So I think that is also a very important aspect.
I think yoga teaching actually helps us with that, because oftentimes we're eating things not necessarily because that we enjoy eating it. We're eating it without thinking. That's mindless eating, right? So oftentimes what we experience is that, if 1 scoop of ice cream makes me feel good, maybe 3 scoops of ice cream after will make you actually feel bad. So you have to, really think about how your body really feels after that consumption, so that can guide us with better choice. Because I have personal experience in the past of, getting really hungry and mindlessly eat a lot of, chips or something, and then you feel bad after.
You feel bad.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
So I think it's important coming from you that, and there's a lot of studies about this ultra processed food that is available.
Yeah.
So I think a couple of studies, you are also part of those studies.
I think it's definitely important for us to minimize ultra-processed food, but also give us self-compassion when it comes to diet, because we all have our weaknesses.
Yeah.
And some people say 30-70 rules, and I probably do 20-80, allow myself to lapse for the 20% of the time, because sometimes we do have the desire of, reaching for the chocolate or the cookie. I think allow yourself to consume that, but really take it as a treat.
So you say 20% time.
That is not based on science. That is just what people say.
Your experience.
That's
yeah. Take back the scientific
but
aspects.
I think just like we don't have to be like 100% strict. 100%.
It's impossible to be
exactly
100%.
right. We're all humans, so.
But then if you stick to Melody's rule 80-20, you can still maintain that fitness. So that's important. Well, that's also very helpful. Now, physical activity, then diet. And then another very important area that is emerging now is about sleep.
Correct. And for a long time, we were ignoring that as scientists.
Yes.
But more and more evidence is now showing that good sleep quality and quantity is important. Sleep is pretty much 1/3 of our life, right?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
it's super, super important. And that's when we recharge, regenerate, rest. And I think for sleep, it is really important to acknowledge that the individual needs for sleep is really different. Some people can function with 5 hours a day really energetically, otherwise need at least 9. So there is a range. We can only say on average, the current recommendation is 7 to 9 hours for adults and 7 to 8 hours for older adults.
Okay.
And so that's sleep time, that's not time in bed. That's, because sometimes we we lie down in bed and it takes us some time to, fall asleep.
Bed, yeah.
So, if we're considering the time we are awake in bed, we probably need to add more time to the 7 to 9 on average to spend in bed. And sleep hygiene is also very important. Sleep consistency, we ideally want to go to sleep at around similar time every day and wake up around similar time. And, some people have naturally earlier schedules, others, later.
A little later.
I think it's important that we listen to that,
So, okay, so there's no fixed timing you're recommending for sleep?
No. I think that's very individual, depending on your job, depending on your genetics, and depending on your circumstances, where you live, many things. But ideally, try to stick to relatively regular routine, and then try to minimize screen time before.
That is important. This is adding a lot of more problems in the quality and quantity of sleep for people. So, do you follow all this discipline?
The screen time thing is a weakness of mine, because I study my Duolingo before going to bed. That's like the only time consistently I have for learning Spanish. And then oftentimes it ends up being in bed and then just falling asleep while doing my Duolingo. So, we all have our areas of improvement. This is something that I really want to improve, and I'm very honest
But you're still
about
making
it.
sure that you get 7 to 9 hours of sleep.
I am a slightly, I think my sleep needs is less than an average person, so I usually don't get to 7, but I can function pretty well with 6 or 6.5.
Okay.
So it's always been like that. So, if I get 7, I'm really happy, but if I get 6.5, I'm still...
You're still good.
Yeah.
So I think that is also very helpful, because if you look at yoga texts, say Bhagavad Gita, it talks about diet, talks about physical activity, it talks about sleep as inseparable parts of yoga practice. Even if I'm doing asanas, asana just is one component of yoga. And if I do not follow the diet and physical activity and sleep properly, then the yoga is not going to give benefit. That's what Bhagavad Gita is saying. So I think what you have said with scientific evidence is going very close to what yoga recommendations are.
My conclusion is yoga is wise.
Okay.
We have such, intrinsic wisdom for, thousands of years. Now we're just trying to prove the obvious.
Yes, I think that's a very interesting thing you're saying. So it's a traditional wisdom. Probably that also came to these masters through the research. They probably observed it for few
Just
thousand.
in their different methodologies.
Exactly. So that's very helpful.
Yeah.
And you have achieved it by following all of that. So I think coming from you is double important, because it is based on your experience, your knowledge, and also your behavioral changes. So I think it's wonderful. If you want to add something more to this secret.
I want to add one more ingredient, and that's my more recent emerging research area. It's about social connection.
Wow.
I think for a very long time we've been ignoring this component. You know, the World Health Organization defines health as, you know, basically the well-being of our physical, mental, and social health.
Social health.
And it's like when we think about a stool with 3 legs, we can't, you know, sit balanced on 2 legs, right?
Correct.
But somehow this social element has been missing all these years until pretty recently. You know, I think COVID has really stimulated a lot of conversation about it. And my own research has pointed at a causal relationship between chronic loneliness and poor quality of life and poor physical health. And there's been so much research linking loneliness and social isolation to a broad range of health outcomes with effect sizes that are comparable to these risk factors that we were talking about earlier.
That's big.
So I always, you know, challenge people to think that, you know, for a long time our health recommendation has been very individual. It's been very like self-focused, you know, eat well, sleep well, exercise well. But the thing we have been missing is, you know, who are we spending time with? You know, do we have a strong social bond
Very
with someone?
important, you
Are we
said.
eating with someone, or are we just eating alone?
Alone,
You know,
yeah.
so I think it's really important. That again goes back to yoga. Yoga means union. So, you know,
Connection.
I think through the yoga community as well, like it's easy to find that connection. Then we need to really cultivate and keep that connection.
What you just said is actually there are a couple of studies, and the studies are also pointing out that many people go to yoga classes for this social connection that you are
Exactly,
saying.
and
Yeah.
I think that, you know, it's really important that we keep that and make that just as important as our healthy diet, physical activity, and good sleep.
That's really wonderful to know. But just tell me, if someone is feeling that loneliness, what will be the implications for their health?
It is, you know, being associated with, for example, higher risk of mortality in general,
Higher risk of mortality,
premature mortality.
premature
and,
mortality. That's very significant. Just because I don't have social connections, there is a chance that I'll die early.
Yep.
And it's very
Cardiovascular
interesting.
disease and diabetes. Cognitive function has been very strongly linked to, you know, it makes sense, right?
makes
you're
sense,
you're
absolutely.
missing that stimulus
Correct.
in your life, right? So really a broad range of health risk. And
This is significant because you almost took names of all the important systems like heart, brain, and probably depression and
enough
other
reasons, yeah.
mental health issues are again connected with that.
So I think we need to be mindful of that, but in the meantime, really acknowledge that occasionally feeling lonely is okay. That's just part of being humans. So there's no need to raise the red flag. You know, we all have been lonely at some point in
Correct.
our life because we're humans. But if we're, you know, in a long time, you know, for years, for months, feeling like that we just don't have anyone to rely on, don't have a strong social bond, I think, you know, it's really important for us to think about how we can change that. And for us also to give the compassion to the people who might be lonely. You know, maybe just invite that person to dinner, maybe asking how that person is doing. Because oftentimes everybody wants to connect. We're human beings.
Absolutely.
But sometimes, especially when someone is chronically lonely, that self-consciousness of, you know, there must be something wrong with me, that no one loves me, no one wants to hang out with me. That kind of gives the responsibility to all of us to look after fellow human beings.
You explained that right now this is extremely important. But my next question to you is, nowadays everyone has their phones and they're on the social media, they're connected to not hundreds but thousands. So does this social connections help?
Quantity is different from quality. When we talk about loneliness and social isolation, we're speaking about quality, not quantity.
So basically you're not taking into consideration how many social media connections you have, but you're talking about the quality connections, that how many times you're spending or communicating with people live there.
and how you think that you can confide with that person.
Okay.
Open
That's-
your heart, be vulnerable with that person.
That's very important, I think, because many people these days think that yes, I'm socially very connected, but the media, the internet and the social media, that doesn't really showing any kind of help to the people with what Melody is saying.
It might help for some people, again, that we have,
okay.
think about someone who lives in the middle of nowhere, cut off from the rest of the world.
Okay.
Is it better off that person had some social media to connect
That's
with the rest
also
of the world,
interesting
right?
perspective
So
you're
it's
saying.
very important that we think about the differences. But in general, when we're on social media, we tend to filter ourselves rather than, trying to form true connection with people. So I think, it's very individual, but it again gets down to the fact that we want quality relationship, genuine relationship.
Genuine relationships, yeah. So that is most important. So, and what you have described is actually supporting what Yog is being saying, and the research is also going in that same direction. So I think it's wonderful if we take into consideration the scientific evidence and then follow our path. So I think it's just enlightening to have these guidelines for all of these important lifestyle aspects. It's wonderful to have you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Melody.
Thank you.
It's always wonderful to hear from Melody the new ideas and how we can integrate those into our day-to-day life to make it better. So thank you again very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hari Om.
Hari Om.